Hi.
Hello. Hi, Lisa.
Have
Thank
I
you.
met you? I feel like I know you.
No, we haven't met each other in person before.
Oh, okay. Oh, thanks for having me.
I really have no idea what we're going to talk about. I don't have a list of questions, and that seems to be the way I like to do it. I don't really want to have a list of questions. Um, yeah, but I do know the general topic, of course, and the general topic is really it's self-exploration. So set on
Mhm,
a kind of a foundation of self recognition. So I'm kind of assuming in a way that
mhm.
people that listen to this are already familiar with the recognition of their true self, that they maybe have a teacher or
Yeah.
a guide, or they're familiar with maybe non-dual teaching or maybe some other type of
Mhm,
teaching. So I'm kind of coming from there. And,
mhm.
being around that kind of scene, you could say, for a while, I speak to a lot of people. And I suppose I see that people pick up, just like the human mind, I suppose, we pick up a lot of
Mhm,
ideas, about what it is
mhm.
to live as the self or to be awake.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, maybe this podcast is, I suppose, I think I want to bring more clarity, maybe in myself
Mm.
and like just within us, within us all, and
Fantastic.
to just dispel like ideas that aren't needed and really just exploring living as our true nature as opposed to living from ideas.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't know who I said yes to. I just felt a yes, and I just really trust in that. And so I didn't actually look at who you were until this morning. I was like, oh, she's been with Muji. Oh, Ellen Emmett. Oh, Jack O'Keefe. Oh, okay. Because I was really, and we'll talk about this when we get going, but most people have no idea what it means to be the true self. They have no idea. So I didn't know who was interviewing me. Like I didn't know like what level of understanding there was to start off with, but um yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I like that as well. I like that you just kind of trusted your intuition. And when I invite people, I just kind of have that sense. I just trust they'll say yes if they're meant to, and they'll say no if they're not meant to. I don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
And
I'm thrilled to be here. I absolutely love what you're doing, and this whole idea of truth talks. It's time in my mind for this conversation.
yeah, I suppose we could start with like your work is at the moment, there might be different aspects to your work, but the aspect that I'm aware of at the moment is called the healing cure. And when I was looking at your webpage, how it kind of interprets to me when I'm reading it is like it's your way of saying living as the true self,
Mhm.
which is who you are beyond ideas. And that's it, beyond your ideas of a body, mind, personality, or any ideas about anything, really. So, what we discover ourselves to be when we just be and let go of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the healing cure was born out of me being physically sick. I've been on a spiritual path pretty much my whole life. It started with self-help books and law of manifestation and law of attraction and all of that kind of stuff. And I knew that wasn't it. I knew like this isn't about having more stuff. I always had this sense even as a child that there's something else going on, and I always wanted to reach it. And so I've been on a spiritual path, like 100% devoted since 1992 with the Course in Miracles. And I just wanted to reach the self. I didn't even know what that meant. I
Mm.
just I just felt like everyone that has talked about it, I'd read so many stories of awakening, and it didn't seem like it was happening to me. Like I was
Mm.
getting happier, but I was still suffering. I was still in conflict and doubt and pain and shame, and I kept thinking I must be doing something wrong. I'm missing something. There's something missing. And I'd hear these stories, Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle and people who have spontaneous awakenings. And I kept thinking, what am I doing wrong here? And in 2000 12, I think it was January, I got flu-like symptoms and they just never went away.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until, and I tried everything to heal. I tried every diet, supplement, alternative therapies, and I tried mind over matter, mind over body. I tried doing nothing. I tried spiritual approaches. I read every possible thing I could on healing. I went all the way back to like the late 1800s. I know everything there is to know about healing from what anybody I
Yeah.
do. I've read everything. I've read every teacher. I went to workshops, and each one had a little something in it that spoke to me. And I was like, oh, that's it. I'll try that. But it wouldn't work.
Mm.
Like I kept feeling like this isn't it either.
Mm.
And then my husband, Bill Free, was at a Rupert Spira week-long retreat back in October 2018. And Rupert Spira is a non-duality teacher. And I didn't really know about non-duality too much at that point. And we were speaking on the telephone October 2018, and the symptoms were at an all-time high. I mean, I was going blind. I couldn't talk. I had severe dry mouth, just mucus all the time, light sensitivity. I very much could not keep my eyes open much of the time. Driving was difficult. Just pain, and it had been diagnosed as an incurable autoimmune condition, and I just was on the phone with him, and he said, "Can you welcome it?" And I was like, "Oh, that's an idea I've not heard of before."
Mm.
And that was the beginning. That was really for me a space where I just started welcoming all the symptoms, not trying to fix them anymore. I stopped with all the diets. I stopped with the supplements. I stopped with the searching on Google. I stopped the old habits still kicked in. I still would go, oh, maybe there's one more little thing. But something happened in that idea where I saw that I wasn't welcoming, that I was trying to fix it again and make the symptom go away.
Mm.
And through that experience, the self became known. Like I had an awakening. Like it was just this thing of like, oh, this is what everyone was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the self is. It was always here. It was always here in the background, but we can't see it while our focus is on the objective material world, which includes the body. So that's what the healing cure is all about. It really is not about body healing, although that does happen sometimes, but I absolutely have done my best to not promote it as a body healing program. It's a awakening to the true self and living as the true self, of really showing up that way and what that means.
Yeah. And did you get like physical healing through that process?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did. And I don't like to talk about it that much, even though I know people are super interested in it, and because it's a paradox, really, because it's
because that can't be the reason we're doing it, or else if you're doing it with a purpose in mind, like, because then you're still, what you said, you're doing it to try to get a result, whereas the whole point was you were giving up to trying to get results.
well, there's that, but the part that's mostly unseen is, let me see if I can try to describe this. As soon as the attention and the awareness and the focus goes on the body, that is where you're identified with. You think, and that's what is the separation. I'm a body, and in that is I'm separate. I'm alone and I'm separate. And people think that there's a spirit in the body, that we all have separate bodies
Mm.
and that we all have connection to spirit, but that's not the truth. The truth is there's only consciousness, there's only oneness, there's only wholeness, and it is
Mm.
ageless, genderless, bodiless. It's not connected in linear time. And most people do not have their awareness on this eternal, changeless, shared being,
Mm.
which is called by many names: consciousness, life, awareness, love, God. So there's many different names for it, but it's the thing that's, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's what we are.
Mm.
And so when the focus goes back into the body, you're limiting yourself again. And
Mm.
the great thing, though, is that we can be in bodies. We can absolutely keep our attention and awareness on the self and let and allow it to be expressed through the body. So we're not saying the body doesn't exist and isn't real. We're not like putting our head in the sand and checking out, but it is more and more the identification is on the self, and
Mm.
then it can be expressed through the body.
Yeah, I think this is the point where a lot of people get stuck in living as the self, because when you, like you said, or what I hear when you're talking is like you kind of allowed your um light of consciousness, you could say, instead of like focusing it on your body, you allowed it to not focus on anything really. So it's not necessarily that you have to focus on something, you just didn't focus on anything. So when you don't focus on anything, it's just itself. Um, but I think where people get caught up then is that if then something happens in the body, like sensations or whatever it is, I like to just use a kind of a broad term, like kind of conditioning. So that can be a mixture of things. It can be thoughts, it can be sensations. Often they go together. So people often feel like just because they arise, then that means that they're therefore not really the light of consciousness anymore. They've somehow become a body again. But I think you said something like that. It's not really about, there's never like a separate body necessarily. Well, there isn't. um, but this is where people get stuck, I think. And that's what I wanted to kind of ask you, because you said, but you might not have meant this. You said when your attention focuses on the body, that then we start to believe we're the body. So do you think that's just like that? Or do you think, because I would kind of feel like I can have my attention in my body and my awareness in my body, but I don't think it matters.
And you're absolutely right. Like, it's an interesting thing because, like, for me as a teacher, I I have to always be in the recognition that everyone is in that moment at a different place. There's some people who have never ever heard of these ideas ever. They only know the body and symptoms and thoughts and feelings and emotions and memory, and that's totally fine. And then there's other people who've been on a spiritual path for quite some time. There's other people who know non-duality understanding. They know. So there's all these different kind of levels where people think they are in that moment.
Mm.
So for many people, the location, I call it a location. So in the Healing Cure, it's based on two questions. What am I? And where am I? And where am I isn't a physical location. It's what's my point of viewing? Am I viewing from the separate self, or am I viewing from the whole self, from the true self?
Mm.
Most people are in suffering. They're in pain. They have tried everything. They're wanting help. And most people do not get it like snapping my fingers. Like, they don't get it instantly. They don't. People can say there's only wholeness. Nobody gets it that way. Nobody's like, what? Like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about? So
Mm.
you have to start where someone is
Yeah.
in their pain and suffering, and then see how far they're willing to go. And like right now, I'm just going to ask everyone to wiggle their toe. Wiggle, wiggle. And if you don't have a toe, if you don't have a foot, just wiggle your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Moving your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Moving your head. Okay? Do you think that's a miracle? No one thinks
Yeah.
that's a miracle. No one thinks like, oh, I just wiggled my toes and that's a miracle. Can a dead body do that?
Mm-hmm.
A dead body can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then people think, well, so you ask, how did you do that? How did you just wiggle your toes?
I love this. My teacher talks exactly the same way.
Calls it what?
My teacher speaks exactly the same way. You know, we think we're doing it. It's like whatever we do, we wiggle our finger like this. You say wiggle your finger, and we wiggle our fingers. And then
Mm-hmm.
you say, how did you do it? But then when we ask ourselves, how do we do it? We actually don't know. We don't know how we did it. And that's because we didn't do it. Like, I don't know how,
Yeah.
but no matter what you say, if you say clap your hands, I can clap my hands.
Yeah. And people think it's the brain. People say, well, my brain did it. Well, can a dead body's brain move the fingers? It can't be the brain.
Mm.
So, and even science is beginning to get on board with this understanding that the body is not intelligent. The body literally does nothing. So we hear lots of people saying the body is so intelligent. The liver knows what it's doing. The organs, they just function. You don't have to think about them. The heart pumps without you thinking about it. So people, this is the teaching that we've all been taught, that the body has organs and the heart beats, and that listen to your heart, listen. And it's not anything bad with this, but the body is not intelligence. We are the intelligence. And we, as the intelligence, are not sick. This intelligence, which is nameless, genderless, bodiless, formless, it doesn't have a name. It doesn't have any of the qualities that bodies have. Is perfect. It's whole. And this wholeness encompasses and envelops everyone and everything. So this intelligence, and this takes a bit for people to go, this so far out from what this conversation has been mostly in the world. People just think, I'm a body, I have problems, I'm suffering, my legs aren't working, my this isn't working, my partner is doing this. The focus is so much on the body identity. And so we have to like expand it out and play with the idea. That's how I am as a teacher. Don't take my word for it, but play with it a little bit. Like have a sense of like, oh yeah, what is this thing that allows the hand to move?
Yeah. Be curious.
That's it. Like be in a state of curiosity and wonder and playfulness. Jesus, I'm not religious, but I love his example as a man 2,000 years ago. And I love his teachings from, it's just so uncompromising. And he says, you must become as the little children.
Yeah.
So we become as little children to what he called enter the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is just the self. And the Father, I've studied so much with just the metaphysics of some of these Bible teachings and just the things that have wound up in religion as total misunderstandings. But when Jesus said, I and the Father are one, the Father is the self. And he said, I alone am nothing, but I with the Father can do all things. And so that's the wiggling the fingers idea. It's the Father is the self. It's consciousness. I and consciousness are one. And so that's how like the body can get included now, because now we're cooperating with this oneness.
Mm.
We're not fighting anymore, and we're not trying to improve the body self.
Mm.
And I work with a lot of people. I've worked with I wouldn't say thousands in the Healing Cure, but I've worked with hundreds of people in the Healing Cure. And it's the habit of being a body is so deeply entrenched that it takes a while. It takes a while for people to start to trust. And I'm not a doctor, and the laws of the world require me to say, you must see a doctor. And I live by that because I don't know what someone's belief system is. So I never, ever instruct on diet, supplements, medical procedure. Someone has cancer and they want to go do chemotherapy. I'm like, trust in what you're getting to do and go for it.
Yeah.
And because there's nothing anybody can do wrong on the body level that's going to stop this awakening from happening.
So what's coming now is, I know that you've been maybe a teacher of A Course in Miracles. And one of the things that stands out from A Course in Miracles to me is there's a line in a lot of the lessons that says, I am not a body, I am free, for I'm still as God created me. So that was obviously in your being anyway, somewhere during your journey. And so we have this, and we can recognize this on a kind of I don't know if you'd call it like an intellectual, conceptual level or something. But then on our, we can know it and see it and recognize that's true. But then we still have all these sensations in the body. So the exploration that I want to have with you, and maybe this is the exploration that you're having through the Healing Cure, is that just somehow how to bring them together, so we know like that we're not a body, because we can see and experience on some level that I don't know how to talk about that exactly, but then we're also experiencing something that we call a body. We're experiencing sensations, you could say. And sometimes those sensations, it can appear the body may be healthy or the body may not be healthy, and I think there's also that idea that if I am truly living as the self, then my body won't have any disease, but I wouldn't, I don't know if you'd like to say something about that. I wouldn't say that, or I haven't seen that to be true, because all the bodies die in the end, don't they? They all die of something.
Exactly. Yeah, that was beautifully stated. I'm the same. Like, that's why my focus is never on body healing. I've done everything I possibly can on my website to make it clear that this is not about body healing, although I have seen it happen. And I love that you use the word exploration. Like, it's the sensations, they're perfect. No, nobody's ever without these sensations, and nobody is ever without thoughts, and nobody is ever without feelings and emotions. And what can happen on a spiritual path is people think, well, I'm not supposed to have thoughts. Like, they have this thing like they're supposed to have empty mind and clear mind and supposed to be happy all the time. I hear that one all the time. Like, oh, I'm not happy all the time. I must be doing something wrong. But the self, it doesn't have any of those qualities. It doesn't have, it's that the consciousness is not like the person. And so, like, to get back to what you said about A Course in Miracles with I'm not a body, I am free. I was with it for 30 years, and I still read it every day. I still love the book. I find it to be totally brilliant. I don't like the Christian terminology, but I'm not a body, I am free. For 25, 30 years, until the non-dual understanding, I thought, yeah, but I'm in a body, so I must be doing something wrong. I totally missed what that meant. I absolutely did not know what it meant that I'm not a body. I kept thinking, yeah, but I am. I wake up in the bed in the morning. Here it is, this thing. But I'm not a body. I am free. Oh, I must be doing something wrong. So I was constantly trying to do these spiritual practices to make the body disappear. That was me. I don't know how anyone else does it, but I kept thinking, there'll be an awakening later when the body's gone.
Mm.
So when I, through my husband, Bill Free, stumbled upon these non-duality teachers, I was like, oh, like Frances Lucille and Ellen Emmett, who I saw was on your podcast. I mean, she is brilliant because she includes the body.
Mhm.
So it's this, I think one of the most amazing books right now is The Greatest Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And I was someone who just absolutely could not stand the book The Secret. You know, it was all law
Mhm.
of attraction and law of manifestation. And Rhonda Byrne, I don't know if you knew this, but after The Secret was published, she, you know, was super famous, super rich. But her daughter got sick, and she started having this experience that this isn't it. Law of attraction and law of manifestation is still something missing. And she kind of went away for like 10 years, and she came upon the non-dual teachers. And so the greatest secret is all these teachings of in what I find to be a very practical down to earth way, which I needed. Um, and you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to. So when you mention the sensations, that's information and intelligence.
Mm.
So what we can start to do is what the mind often does in sickness. It just wants to get rid of the sensation and the pain and the feeling.
Mhm.
It doesn't like discomfort, the mind. It wants to get to some imagined state of peace and happiness and no pain. And so the mind gets very active then, and it starts trying to fix, improve, change the experience from what is happening now, so that in the future you'll have whatever idea one has about it, a perfect body, no pain, happiness, peace, and joy. But if when we welcome it,
Mm.
it's like, oh, okay, I have heartburn, I have this, I can't talk, I'm going blind, my knee hurts, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm this, and you don't move from that location. You just stay with it, stay in the discomfort, and allow yourself. You know, my husband, he's the one who, I know this is an audio podcast, but the hand is going to the heart right now. It's going to my chest area where it's, and you can close your eyes. You don't have to do any of these things, but it can be very helpful to just allow this mind to be quiet, just to allow this presence, to start to allow it to come through. And that's a scary place for a lot of people, because it's the mind is just like, no, I just got to get rid of the pain. I just have to do something. We as people, as bodies, we do. And it takes a level of trust to just say, okay, I'm going to welcome all this, not try to fix it anymore. And again, it's hard. It's a tough thing for me sometimes to teach, because sometimes the intelligence is saying change your diet.
This is what
It's
I was
saying,
going to say. Something.
yeah, it's saying go to the doctor, go here. Go. So each and every one has to really begin to listen and trust in this wisdom and this intelligence, which is speaking directly to each and every one of us. It knows what it's doing, not the body. The body doesn't know what it's doing. This
Mm.
intelligence does. And yeah, and then you can. So what happens in sickness is most people go on, let's say, a gluten-free diet like I did. No dairy, no gluten, no this, no that. Coming from a place of lack and fear and sickness. So we're coming from the location of disconnection. We've disconnected ourselves from this wholeness, which is not possible in truth, but we think we're separate.
Mm.
And we're in fear. The body has these physical symptoms. We read on Google, we can minimize and manage symptoms with, let's say, a gluten-free diet. So a lot of people who are on gluten-free diets, not everyone, but many are on it because they're in fear. They're in lack and limitation. When you come back to self, you come back to wholeness, there's suddenly information and intelligence that's like, it comes from a different place. It's like, I don't really feel like eating that. That's no, no, ugh. Like it comes from a
Mm.
different place where suddenly it's like, oh, I'd like to eat fresh and local and whole, and I can eat bread sometimes. It's like there's no fear there's no rules anymore like there were before.
Mm.
And so it's one of those things for me as a teacher. I have to really just keep telling people you have to trust in what's coming to you and you just go for it.
Mm. It reminds me of what you said earlier when you said something like to check in with, like, where am I? And I don't know if you said who am I or what am I? You definitely said where am I though. So it's kind of like where you're coming from in all things, like if you're changing your diet, are you coming from a mind perspective, like of fear and I need to do, like you said, lack, fear, lack, all these things, or are you just coming from a inspiration? Because things like that I feel can come and do come from inspiration as well. And I think maybe that's just the thing that grows, like, kind of being able to distinguish between where it's coming from. But we don't even need to distinguish where it's coming from necessarily. I think we can know if we're to just recognize the self. I would feel like to recognize who we are, like reminded me again of what you said, like, where am I? Who am I? What am I? Or
Yeah,
whatever question feels true for us, maybe.
yeah. And I think everyone should really experiment. I mean, again, it's a I don't ever know what someone's belief system is. So let's just say someone has diabetes, diagnosed as diabetes, has severe reaction. That thought system is so like stable as that person's reality that
Mm.
it's probably not a good idea to start eating things that are what set off the diabetes.
Yeah.
Like I think everyone has to really um, just listen. That's the thing and I think to try things out, to try things. I'm one for the gradual, slow approach. That's me. Like I see a lot of people that just slowly go off medication, slowly change things, slowly.
Mm.
And then they can see for themselves. They can
Yeah.
really see like, oh, okay. See what fear arises,
Mm.
see. But Mike, almost never speak like this. Like, definitely not in the Healing Cure for sure. I don't offer any advice ever. Like,
Yeah.
um, just in this moment, it's coming through. But as far as that program goes, it's strictly on knowing the self.
Yeah. What's coming through more for me is that you're kind of encouraging just really listening
Hmm.
to your own self and trusting your own self and just being kind of slow, slow and gentle with your own process, which I think sounds really good because it's going to be different for every person. And that doesn't necessarily mean like maybe some person can move through things really fast as well.
Hmm.
So it's just like you can't really get stuck on saying one thing.
Yeah, and I think like in the awakening, I mean, it's happening now. There's so many people that are now very much interested in these kinds of conversations. They're not interested anymore in having a better life. And the paradox is you have a better life because you'll be connected in peace and joy.
Yeah.
So there's absolute freedom when when you finally know the self, when you know what you are and you're living as it.
Mm.
And like one of the things I hear a lot is people say, I'm almost there. I'm so close. I'm almost there. I just have to put my foot in the river and I just have to let go of my self-image and I have to, they still think they have to do something. They still think that awakening is later.
Mm.
And that's just because so many spiritual teachers have taught it that way. And it's not the ones who've had the spiritual awakening. Those guys are like, it's here.
Mm.
They always just say the same thing. It just is a realization and a recognition. It's all here. It literally is encompassing and enveloping you completely. So one of the things that I don't know if other spiritual traditions beside A Course in Miracles talk like this, but I hear a lot in A Course in Miracles because it says things like, the world you see out there, you caused it with your thoughts.
Mm.
And that's true, but it's not true in truth. It's true in like this belief in bodies. And the way I describe it is like a playground. So if you can imagine a playground when you were in grade school, there's lots of different kinds of people on it, right? There's bullies and there's best
Mm.
friends and there's people playing and jump roping and there's people who wish recess was longer, people who wish it didn't exist at all. There's people reading, there's people afraid of an upcoming test. You're the playground.
Mm.
So it's not like, how did I cause this violence and this war? If you're asking that question, you're asking from the location of in the playground. But you are the playground.
Mm.
You envelop and encompass everything. This consciousness, it doesn't have a preference.
Mm.
It doesn't, so rich, poor, violent, non-violent, spiritual, not spiritual.
Mm.
Everyone has access to this realization. It's not because you've done more spiritual work, you're closer to it. No, we're literally in it.
Mm.
It's what we are.
Mm.
And so it's just a matter of getting still and quiet and having this realization of, oh, haha.
Mm. And maybe it's like we didn't create the world, but we kind of are creating our interpretation of the world and how we experience the world just through giving things meaning. Like if there's, like you say, someone in the playground over there, we're saying this is bad and this is good, and I
Mhm.
want to be like that and all this. Whereas when we just, like you say, kind of just allow our attention and awareness to just be here rather than out and adding meaning to it, then everything is kind of just the same.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. That's it. And that's exactly what we do in the world. We're in the limitation.
Mm.
And most people just they don't know any better. I didn't know any better. We're born into bodies, so seemingly. We think from the second we get here, the second
Mm.
it's a boy, it's a girl.
Mm.
Literally, the naming and the whole thing starts. There's many cases before we even get here.
Yeah.
People know the gender of the baby, and of course, what's happening now in the world is so awesome. These kids that are being born are like, "Don't put a label on me."
Yeah.
Like consciousness is having its way now.
Mm.
It's becoming more of what it is,
Mm.
and what happens is that they won't these kids they're like, I'm not putting the limitation on myself, and please don't you put the limitation on me either.
Mm. Yeah.
And so it's moving more into this like identification with that which cannot be named.
Yeah. And I don't really know what I'm going to say, but so we could recognize the self, and then we can be living as the self, but then there can be certain aspects of our life where we feel like identity comes up. like whatever, like a certain situation. But I guess it doesn't really matter, like, because it's like, let's say if you see your life as a thing, like a line or a circle or something. So on one point in the line, if this is the identification part, but in all the other parts you're not identified, then that will kind of leak in here eventually. Because we don't because this is where we suffer, isn't it? Where we're identified. So this is more that when I say like self-exploration, this is kind of what I mean. So it's really bringing self-recognition into every moment of our life. And I think it's a kind of it's not necessarily false, but I feel for most of us in the world, it's like recognition of the self doesn't just wipe away all of our um, identities. And it doesn't just wipe away all our conditionings and problems. It might take away a lot of them. And it also, I feel like it gives us a kind of a new, well, it gives us the point that we're actually looking from there as opposed to looking from our minds. um, but it doesn't just take everything away. So the self-exploration is, I suppose, the exploration of how to get through. I don't know if how to is the right word, but getting through those different identities. Because sometimes it can feel like it's too hard, too big of a leap to jump to the self-recognition, and this is what comes up a lot in this conversation is like spiritual bypassing, because we can do that with our minds. Like it's very easy. We can say, oh yeah, well, I know who I am, but experientially, and that's why, the teachings of Rupert Spira and Ellen Emmett and probably many others that really include the body, I feel are really good, because our bodies seem to be a little bit slow in getting the message. It's like, okay, we've realized we're like beyond this world, really. But yeah, we still kind of find ourselves seemingly in a world, and our experience is a body, and the body is actually experience and separation. Even though here, and maybe even in the heart as well, like your heart knows that you're not separate, and our minds know that we're not separate. But yeah, the body is still experiencing separation. Um,
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm so happy you said it because like I always just thought, um, oh, I'm just going to be the self and Lisa's, I don't know, like the identity is going to go away.
mm,
That's not been my experience. Like Lisa Natoli is a certain way. She has certain a way of expressing, and so
mm,
does Amba. You
mhm,
have a certain way of expression, and everyone has their own unique way of being in the world. And so the beautiful part is that the personality is included. It
yeah.
doesn't go away. I'm still me,
Mhm,
but there's no suffering anymore. There's no sadness. I don't get tripped up by things. I don't that used to trip me up. Like and and I'm not identified anymore with the image. So I'll just give you an example. Like years ago, I started blogging. I started a website in 2004. And this person didn't kill himself because of me. I got this email from someone in California who just randomly was reading on the internet back then and found me and was going to kill himself and didn't kill himself. And at the time, I was like, oh, I'm helping people.
mm,
Oh, my words are inspiring and uplifting, and I can help someone. I can be a light in the world. So I took on this identity because I didn't have understanding back then. And it's not that it's a bad thing. So I spent years being like the cheerleader, the inspirer, the influencer, the uplifter, I blogged every day. I did not miss a day. Then I started on Facebook. I spent so much time just really wanting to be a light in this world, just wanting to help people.
mm,
And that's why I got sick, I'm sure of it, because I was totally disconnected. It was like the mind takes over an idea
mm,
and then keeps you in the limitation. Well,
mm,
something started happening over the last couple of years where that all disappeared.
mhm,
And then the funny thing is my Facebook page got hacked and deleted a year ago, March 2021.
mm,
I just woke up one day and it was gone and I couldn't get it back. And I was like, how funny that my entire routine, and then I started up another page, but it's got like 200 likes, people on it.
Mm-hmm.
I never went back again.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, Lisa's not involved anymore in that sense of like needing to help people, needing people to like me,
Mm-hmm.
none of that is there anymore. That was part of the limitation. So when we say that the body still is included, it just means that it's like a vehicle for the expression of whatever this is when it wants to come through. No
Mm-hmm.
attachment to it.
Yeah. And I wanted to pick up on something that you said. You said, okay, I don't know exactly what you said, but you said something like, I don't get sad anymore. Okay, you said a few other things. So I wanted to ask you about that. Like, do you mean that you yourself don't get sad, like your true self, because your true self can never get sad, or there's never sadness in the expression of you as a human?
Well, it's like that's a great question, and there'll be moments where I'll see something or read something, like right now with Russia and Ukraine. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just the horrific things that happen in the world. A lot of gun violence nowadays, just with the ending of COVID for 2 years, and people don't have money, and people, so I'm still here. I'm still part of the world, and I still experience all of this. I don't get trapped by it anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
before I would see something and I would feel, and see, this is where I'm glad you asked the question, because I don't know if I would call it sadness, but an emotion might pass through, a feeling might pass through, and I don't try to get rid of it anymore. I no longer, but I also no longer let it pull me in.
Yeah.
So now I used to think thoughts were my thoughts, that I'm thinking these thoughts. I'm sick. I'm a good person. I'm a guilty person. I'm whatever thoughts we hold about ourselves. And now I know that thoughts just arise and disappear. They
Mm-hmm.
just arise in consciousness and disappear in consciousness. And so what we do as bodies is we mistakenly think these are my thoughts. I'm sick, I'm suffering, I can't, I won't, I will, I can. We move all over the map as far as like what the thoughts and the feelings are, but nothing can grab us anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you become at a certain point rooted and established in peace and happiness in this true self. And then the listening it kicks in. So it's like when I see these things of Russia and Ukraine, for example, it's just a deep listening. Just of the healing cure is actually could be called the Holiness Cure. It's really is the first point is just to observe and bless if there's any emotions happening in me, realizing this is all happening in the one mind. This one mind is every mind in Ukraine, Russia, and everyone in the entire world. And then just resting in this oneness and knowing that this is happening in every mind, in those who fear, who suffer, who are sad, who are hungry. So to me, this is true healing, is when we can recognize that what happens in my mind happens in every mind, and they probably don't know it,
Mm-hmm.
but joy heals. Joy and remembering the truth, it literally is a light that dissolves these thought patterns in every mind. And that might sound really weird to a lot of people, but that's how Jesus was healing. He didn't do anything. Jesus the man doesn't do anything. And then there's a listening, like, okay, what some people are called to go there and help.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are, and it happens on a basic level, even here. Like if there's something you're called to go do, help animals, help children, give money, um, whatever it is,
Yeah, we don't even
Don't
have to think about those things, isn't it? If we're called to do something, you just kind of know that this is what has to happen. Like this is just what's happening. So you could resist it if you wanted, but even that would be too hard, probably. Like
That's what most people do, though. Most people, they resist what's coming through. And many people on a spiritual path, I've heard it so many times, and again, I don't know if it happens across the board, but people think, oh, that's worldly. I'm not a body, I am free. And that's the mind imposing a limitation on this universal oneness that just seeks expression. And what we do is we block it. We're like, oh, yeah, there's no one suffering. People say that. There is no suffering. I need do nothing. And we take these spiritual concepts and the mind uses them to keep you in limitation. And then sickness is inevitable because we're imposing these limitations. But if you were to let go of all your ideas of what you think you're supposed to do, and and I love that you said there is just this movement. At a certain point, there is only the movement. Most people don't start there. Most people, like the other thing I hear a lot too is I can't tell if this is ego or spirit. Like they're like, I'm not sure what voice I'm listening to. And so a lot of people get caught up in that one for a while. And there's just observe and bless. And I always ask people, do you have to think about it when you need to go pee?
Yeah.
And use the bathroom? No, it's just movement.
Yeah. And you wouldn't start thinking like if you need to go, like there'd be a movement to go. You're not going to think, do I really need to go? Should I really get up and go?
I know.
Like we just
I'm
don't
not
do
a
it.
body. I'm not a body. I am free.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
No, the movement is like, okay, I'm feeling I want some water right now. Drink it. You want to go, you need to use the bathroom. Go use it. Like I noticed on my I used to have these super long not super long, but hours long Zoom calls with a group. And I would think, oh, well, other people can do hours long Zoom calls and never get up and use the bathroom. Well, I can't. So I always include the break now, but I used to think, oh, but other people do that. So I'll just go for 2 hours. And now I'm like, no, we're moving. We're going to get up. We're going to move. I tell everyone, get up from the computer. Please don't just sit here. I want you to go get some water, use the bathroom, stretch. And so that's the listening. But before I wasn't listening. Before I was like, well, other people don't have to get up in an hour. They can sit for 2 hours. That's me not listening. And that's what the sickness is when we don't listen. And so I truly believe that sickness occurs because we're hiding and we're not listening. There's something going on that wants to be expressed, and for everyone's got their different reasons, but we're shutting it out. We're like holding it back. We're like, no, I'll lose some friends, or people won't like it, or there's something going on. And so there has to be a level of trust, really, to start to let this expression come through. Let this energy move a little bit.
And that's how I feel like that's how they come together, like how the self, let's say, and this world, like the bodies, bodies and everything that we see, how they kind of come together is through listening and just I guess when you're saying listening, it's also trust, isn't it? Like, so you're listening and then trusting and allowing that movement to happen. And like what I hear when you're talking is, and it just kind of affirms how I kind of think is that like when we're recognizing the self and then choosing to, I don't know if they're the right words, but then choosing to live as the self, we're really actually learning to be ourselves as a human.
Yep.
It's like, how is Lisa as a human? How is Amba as a human? And the only way I can know how Amba really is as a human is actually to be myself,
Yep.
like, which is beyond, it's not only beyond, I think it actually includes, like you've been saying, it also includes the body as well. Even though the body is just not what we think it is, like nothing is what we think it is.
That's so beautifully expressed. Yeah, and it's like I'm so happy that you started up this podcast. I know it's new. I know it's
Mm,
recent, and something must have given you the idea,
mm.
and Amber wasn't there to resist it.
Yeah.
It's like there's an openness that happens, and I'm sure there was probably fear around it. There always is when there's a new project. There's always like, I don't know, always in
Yeah.
everyone. There's like whenever there's a new project or there's a new idea, there's something that's coming through. The mind just gets in there and is like, it's going to be too much work. No one wants to hear it. It's already been done.
Yeah, all these things.
I'm sure of it. I know how it goes. And so there's a thing like as a teacher, I'm always encouraging people to just make mistakes and let it be messy. I say that so often, like just because the mind is like, I'll do it when I know it's going to be perfect. I'll do it when I know that's guaranteed success. And
Mm.
never is it guaranteed success. Like,
Yeah.
but you just have this willingness and this openness to say, okay, I'll just go in that direction. Okay, let me look at like what creating a podcast entails. Okay, I need an account with Apple. Okay, oh, I need to figure out how YouTube uses. Oh, I need to figure out how Zoom works. I need to figure out, okay, I need to write some people. Okay, so you start to just where you are, and then when fear comes up, and it will, just natural, you just, hello, friend. Like it's like you're not trying to like stop things because fear's there.
Mm.
You're just including it in, saying, okay, I feel really uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
And who am I? Who am I to do a podcast? And you start to really say, like, who cares what people think? Like
Mm.
I'm doing it. I'm so grateful. I love the list of guests you've had on so far.
Mm.
I'm just so happy you invited me.
Mm.
I just know that these kinds of conversations are what people are now looking for.
Yeah.
They want this, not like how to get more stuff.
Yeah. How to get rid of stuff now.
And this stuff is, and see, that's good too because I'm me too. Like I think it's fun to play with in this playground
Mm.
to really say, okay, like, but it's no longer coming from a space of lack or limitation or attachment. It's like,
Mm. It's like
yeah.
I saw that on your course description. There was like week by week, week one, week two, week three, and then like the final step, I think it was the essence of it was like whatever you want to do it now. Exactly like what you're saying. Like we don't have to wait to be perfect and whole. And well, I mean, we are perfect and whole, but we don't have to wait for our human expression to be healed, like of all our conditionings and all our like that fears or anything. It's like we can do it now. We don't have to put life off, because that's what we'd be doing, isn't it? We'd be putting life off, and that's what our
Hmm.
minds would have us do. Our
Yep.
minds would keep us in kind of small and little and not really being alive, like just like, like if it could do this it would, like just a small breath. our
Yep.
minds our minds would have us like that, but our self and our wholeness will have us live fully as the playground.
Yep.
Like you say, I like this.
Yeah, and I can see you light up like that when you're just expressing that because
Mm.
that is consciousness. Like that's what would you love to do? What would be fun for you? What would bring you joy?
Mm.
And most people they're just like, well, how's that going to pay the bills? Or how's that going to oh, that's not spiritual. Or that's like we've become these super serious spiritual seekers
Mm.
when that's a path to nowhere. Like it's really coming back into the you said it earlier, like this curiosity of a child and the wonder of a child.
Mm.
A child doesn't, if you remember, we didn't like to sit around talking about stuff when we were children. We loved to play with each other,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, you don't need to ask each other's names. You know, if kids are in a playground together, they'll just start playing. They're not like, "Hey, what's your name? Where are you from?"
Yeah,
Like adults do.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're just straight
Yep.
into playing. Yeah.
Yep.
So before we finish, is there anything that you would like to express or share or look at? Anything?
Yeah, everyone for listening. And yeah, it really is just in the stillness and in this quiet space that the self is already here. It just needs to be recognized and realized. And
Mm.
um, there's so much that's available right now too. Like I'm so grateful for the internet. Like it's just like the immediacy of these teachings is here for everyone.
Mm.
And I think of like there's actually a conference coming up. It's called the Know Thyself conference, and it has all these teachers. So I'll be there. Ellen Emmett, Francis Lucille, Rupert Spira, um, Course in Miracle teachers. It's free, and it's just amazing to me that people can really experience these teachings. And so many people I hear just feel like, oh, I'm so done with conferences. I'm so done with, well, if you're suffering still,
Mm.
I encourage you to come listen. Like, I don't know. Like, I just think,
Mm.
like, why not?
Yeah. And I think we can't really tire of these things, because sometimes it's like we think I have to actually plug my computer in. Hold on for 1 second. Sorry.
And that's so perfect, you see, because that's where everything gets included in. It's like, oh my God, my computer's about to die in 5 seconds. And you just can go, oh, okay, include that in. Don't try to change anything. Just like, okay. And do you see how fast you moved?
Yeah.
You totally just moved. There was no thinking involved in that. That was a perfect demonstration right there.
Yeah.
And that's intelligence. That's consciousness. It's like you notice, you became aware, like, okay, my computer's going to crash in a second because the thing's not plugged in, and boom, you were moving, and
Yeah.
that's how we're meant to live every day of our life.
Yeah. I was like, phew. I don't know what I was saying. Was I saying something? Don't know what I was saying. Something. Know thyself triggered.
I was saying about people not wanting to, about some people not wanting to like go listen to more teachers or.
Yeah, yeah. I think like we can't really tire of hearing these things over and over again. So even I feel like for teachers, sometimes people look at teachers and they think, oh yeah, they know and whatever. But I think even as a teacher, it's like that's just a new way of reminding yourself, It's like maybe at one point you're like um listening to a teacher, but then at one point you're being the teacher. It really doesn't matter where it comes from because it's all just for consciousness. It doesn't matter, like, because the whole point is that there isn't a separate you and a me. There's just consciousness. So it's going into consciousness all the time.
Mm,
Because I think what happens to some of us is that, and maybe it happens to everyone for a small period of time. For some people, it's maybe a second. For some people, it's 5 minutes. For some people, it's 5 years. But it's like we think, oh, yeah, but I know who I am now. But yet, like you say, there is still suffering. So as long as there's still suffering, there's still space and um, time for exploration.
exactly,
Like
and
that.
this is the reason I love hearing like Stephen Bodian's another one, Rupert Spira, myself. We all speak of 30 years of seeking and being 100% devoted, and still there was like something's missing.
Mm,
We all know it. You can spiritualize it and conceptualize it, and oh, I know myself.
mm.
Okay, really? Are you free? Are you
Yeah.
really? Are you? And in my heart of hearts, I knew. I'm like something's just slightly off. I don't know what it is.
Mm.
But I had an openness. So when my husband, Bill Free, said, look at Rupert Spira and this idea of welcoming, I was a Course in Miracles teacher, refused to look at anything.
Mm.
I was like, that's a limitation I imposed on consciousness. I have to get it through A Course in Miracles. And I kept getting sicker and sicker. Like I kept going, I'm going to get this, I'm going to heal. And it's like life is so generous that it keeps giving us like the next thing. Here it is. And the mind goes, nope, I'm a Course in Miracle teacher. It's like, no, look at this teacher. Nope, I got it.
Yeah.
Until finally it's like, oh, maybe something's trying to get through to me. Okay. And as soon as I started listening to these non-dual teachers, I was like, oh, this is it.
Yeah. And
now I'm back to the
aren't they?
Course. What?
I think like non-duality and non-dual teachers and A Course in Miracles, they're really saying the same thing. I know they kind of have a little bit of a different approach, but like, I don't know, I feel like they're exactly the same. Really.
It is saying exactly the same thing. I came back to A Course in Miracles, but to me, it's so deeply entrenched in Christian terminology that I kept thinking I don't know what to do with the Holy Spirit and Christ, and I got really like confused in all of that kind of different language.
Yeah, and that's why it's good maybe to be open to different types of teachers, because maybe one one set of terminology will kind of get into us and make sense, and then we can understand the other terminologies as well and realize that they're actually the same thing, so that's one good reason to be open to all different things, I think.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This has been fun.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. And so I will link that awakening, what was it called that you mentioned, all the different teachers? Awakening, what was it that you mentioned?
It's called Know Thyself Conference.
Oh yeah, I will link that. Sounds good. Okay, thank you, Lisa. I wish you a wonderful day. So nice to connect with you.
Thank you so much.